Hello, hello. It's Jimmy here from Gym Healthy Habits, and today we're going to go over which diet is the best approach for you. Now, there are tons of dieting fads nowadays that it's tough to tell which ones work and which ones just don't. How many times have you seen this is the best weight loss diet or this is the best way to gain muscle on social media, magazines, TV, even movies? Countless times. Today we're going to go over the 5 most common approaches to dieting. I'll go over their advantages, their disadvantages, and I'll even tell you which one will work best for you. Starting with number 1, low energy diets. So what exactly is a low energy diet, right? This dieting approach is actually specifically related to the amount of calories in your diet. Now, calories equals energy. This you should know. A calorie is defined as the amount of energy needed to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water 1 degree Celsius. So what we calculate as calories is actually a kilocalorie in the scientific community. Low energy diets are those that have a very, very low total number of calories in a day. So this will typically range between 800 to about 1200 total calories. And I know, that sounds like such a small amount, and you're totally right about that. What exactly are the advantages of a low energy dieting approach? Well, for one, it can show a rapid amount of weight loss for those that are overweight and obese. So the decrease in this extra weight can actually result in improving health markers like your BMI, your cholesterol, your blood pressure, and so on. This type of dieting approach is very tough to adhere to since there's such a high increase in your appetite and hunger. You'll be decreasing your calories to such a small amount that you'll be pretty much hungry most of the time. Now, it's also tough to cram all these nutrients in to this 800 to 1200 range in a given day. This makes it tough to make sure that you have all the micronutrients and vitamins you need in a single day. This results in decreased athletic performance and not pushing as much as you might potentially be able to. This dieting approach will actually work best for those that are overweight or obese simply because there's such a drastic decrease in the calories, and as we all know, weight loss is specific to the amount of calories in versus the amount of calories out. Now, number 2, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, is a low-fat dieting approach. A low-fat dieting approach is defined as one that the fat intake in a given day is around 25 to 30% of your total amount of calories. So what exactly are the advantages of a low-fat dieting approach? Well, this approach is good for improving those health markers we mentioned before. BMI, your overall body weight, your overall body fat percentage, blood pressure, cholesterol, and so on. Now, there is some evidence to show that it can prevent coronary heart disease and even slow diabetes progression, but this evidence isn't at all exactly conclusive at the moment. Like any dieting approach, you'll only be able to maintain all these advantages by adhering to the actual diet itself. So what are the disadvantages of a low-fat dieting approach? I know what you're thinking. How can decreasing the amount of fat I have in my diet be disadvantageous at all? Well, for starters, fat is the main form of storage for energy in the body. It also helps to produce and regulate certain hormones. Now, a decrease in the amount of fat can actually have a big impact on your sex hormones, like testosterone. Another disadvantage is that it can really limit the amount of options you have in your diet because most foods do have fats in them. Now remember, not all fat is bad. In fact, your body needs fat in order to regulate those hormones we spoke about. Now, the bad fats that you might have in your diet today are the trans fats and the saturated fats, and these will mainly come from man-made foods or processed foods, chips, cakes, things like that. Number 3 is the low-carb approach. So carbohydrates are broken down into glucose, which is actually absorbed in the bloodstream after you eat them. So they're basically sugar molecules. Carbs are basically divided between simple and complex carbs. What that means is literally just how long it takes for your body to digest the carbohydrate. A low-carb dieting approach is one where the carb content is about 40% or less of your total calorie count in a given day. So what exactly are the advantages of a low-carb dieting approach? This will again reduce the body weight and body fat percentage you might have, which will improve the health markers we spoke about earlier, like BMI, cholesterol, blood pressure, as well as waist to hip ratio and waist circumference. Those with low-carb diets also tend to avoid highly palatable foods or hyper-palatable foods like white rice, white bread, candies, things like that. Things that'll shoot the amount of glucose you have in your system on up. So what are the disadvantages of a low-carb dieting approach? Carbs are actually stored as glycogen in the muscles and are an essential fuel source for high-intensity exercise. This means if you're an athlete, a high-performing athlete, pro athlete, anything like that, you're on a sports team, it's actually not the most ideal dieting approach because you'll want those carbs there. You'll want the glycogen in your system in order to pull fuel for those exercises and for those workouts. Did you know that on average, the brain needs 130 grams of glucose to function? And the carbs we eat in our diet are actually the exact source for that fuel. This makes it a little tough to adhere to a low-carb diet because you'll literally be instinctively craving it. Number 4, the high-protein diet approach. Proteins are the building blocks to life and are essential for all living organisms. They're also very important to pretty much every living process, like structuring, function, and even regulation. A high-protein dieting approach is one where the amount of protein you have in a given day is about 25% or more of all your total calories. So the two biggest advantages to a high-protein dieting approach is that 1, it'll improve those health markers again that we spoke about, because you'll feel more full most of the time. So anything that's higher in protein or higher in fiber will actually take longer for your body to digest. This will leave you feeling fuller for longer, and again result in having less calories or less food, less snacks in a given day. It's also a great way to make sure you're gaining muscle during your resistance exercises phase. So what exactly are the disadvantages of a high-protein dieting approach? Well, for one, it can actually be a little bit dangerous for those with existing kidney disorders, but it's actually not at all dangerous for those that currently have healthy kidneys. Since protein creates that satiety feeling, that feeling of being full, you'll actually be less likely to opt for fiber-rich foods because of the high protein in your diet. Now, high fiber in your foods is actually a very good thing. It's probiotic for the gut, and healthy gut means healthy life, right? So number 5 is actually probably the most complicated dieting approach that might be out there. It's also one of the most popular, the keto diet. Did you know that in 2020, keto was the most Googled food-related topic in the world? Now, a keto dieting approach is actually one where the carb content in your day is about 5% or less of your total calories. Your protein is about 20 to 30%, and your fat intake is actually at about a whooping 65 to 75%. Now, I know what you're thinking. Carbs are essential for the brain, right? That's exactly what we just said. Now, you're right. However, in this instance, the point of a keto approach to dieting is putting your body into a state of ketosis. Ketosis is defined as the process that happens when your body doesn't have enough carbs to break down into glucose to use as energy. Now, when this happens, your body actually looks to the fat in your system to convert into these things called ketones, and it uses these ketones as fuel for the energy it needs. What are the advantages to a keto approach to dieting? There's actually a lot of anecdotal evidence to show that the keto approach can lose a lot of weight very fast and very effectively. So there's actually 4 major advantages to the keto dieting approach, right? So number 1 is the most obvious. You're losing that weight, and it's resulting in improving those healthy markers, right? The BMI, cholesterol, blood pressure, waist to hip ratio. Aside from that, you're again restricting those hyper-palatable foods, those sugary foods, those foods that are really high in carbs, because you can't have carbs in a keto diet. 5%, it's almost nothing. The low sugar levels and high fat levels in this dieting approach have actually been proven to help those with seizures due to epilepsy. The biggest advantage is you get to eat all the foods you love, right? Butter, red meats, nuts, cheese. Who would want to eat that all day? There are 3 main disadvantages to this keto dieting approach. Number one is that it's a very difficult diet to adhere to, because in most cases, having a small potato, a slice of bread, or even a half cup of rice is actually too many carbs to have in a given day for your body to go into a state of ketosis, which is the point of this diet. Since you're literally changing the energy source for your body, it's pretty typical to feel nausea, vomiting, and random headaches when you're just starting this keto diet approach. Now, if you maintain it for an extended period of time, those will go away, your body will adapt, and you won't be feeling those symptoms anymore. There's also a high potential for an increased amount of LDL cholesterol, that's low density lipoprotein cholesterol, the bad cholesterol. So which is it? Which dieting approach is the best for you? Which one's the best for me? Well, it depends on what you want to do. What are your goals, and what will you actually stick to? So if you're an athlete, don't go for the low-carb dieting approach, because you're going to need all that extra energy to sustain those workouts for competition and for training. And if you love your carbs, don't go for the keto approach, because you're going to have to consume less than 5% in your total calorie count for a day in carbs. Your practical health journey should be specific and custom to you, because there's nobody like you and everyone is unique. Now, if you're not sure how to put it together or how to begin, then feel free to click my site link below and we can look into it together. Now, if you found this informative and helpful, hit that like and subscribe button. Share it with your friends, and let me know of any questions you might have or anything you might even disagree with in the comments below. This is Jimmy with Jim Healthy Habits. Thanks for listening.